Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the IEA's Low Emissions Gases Day. This workshop is a key platform to discuss scaling up biomethane, low emissions hydrogen, and e-methane, among other low emissions gases. We're pleased today to have government representatives, industry leaders, and experts with us. And our goal here is to strengthen international dialogue, explore policies, and foster partnerships. So we have a very full agenda of sessions today on policy market integration. So after we hear from our keynote speakers, the sessions will cover the role of biogases in the clean energy transitions, a global stocktake of low emissions hydrogen, and the trading of low emissions gases. But first, we will go to a video address from Kazuki Sadamori, our Director of Energy Markets and Security at the IEA. Thank you. I think we're just waiting for that video to play out.
Dear colleagues, it is my pleasure to welcome you today to the IEA's Low Emission Gas Day, which aims to further enhance the international dialogue on low emissions gases, promote mutually beneficial partnerships, and facilitate information dissemination to the broader public. Today's event is part of the International Energy Agency's Low Emission Gas Work Program, which has been developed to closely monitor market developments in this sphere and facilitate dialogue between the stakeholders both within and across markets. This work is supported by the Clean Energy Transitions Program. Please allow me to say a couple of words about the IEA's Low Emission Gas Work Program. We set up this work program about 2 years ago to enhance our analysis on the short and the medium-term developments related to low-emission gases. It is based on 4 key pillars. We follow a technology-neutral approach with all low-emission gases being considered, including biomethane, low-emission hydrogen, and e-methane. The work program aims to enhance market transparency, provide guidance on the system integration of low-emission gases, and promote producer-consumer dialogue. And one reason why we are looking so closely to low-emission gases is because we expect that their deployment will accelerate over the medium term. In our latest forecast, the supply of low-emission gases is expected to more than double by 2027, translating into an increase of almost 16 BCM in absolute terms. And as you can see on the graph, the majority of that will be supported by biomethane and low-emission hydrogen. Biomethane alone is expected to account for just over half of this growth. So the International Energy Agency has been tracking biogas and biomethane demand, production, and overall potential for a number of years, considering how big a role these gases can play in the transformation of global energy system, where the opportunities and potential pitfalls lie, and what policymakers and industry can do to support sustainable growth in this sector. As you can see, biogas demand sees growth in all IEA scenarios. In the stated policy scenario, policy support for biogas development sees production double by 2035 and more than triple in the announced pledges scenario, which meets on time and in full all national climate and net zero ambitions. By 2050, biogas demand is at least 4 times larger than today, even under today's policy settings. More than 2/3 of this is biomethane, which sees significant growth and becomes larger than biogas. How is this growth distributed? The current leaders are Europe and the United States, and these regions are set to see continued growth with supportive policies such as the IRA in the United States of America or the Repower EU plan in the EU. But over time, we see significant growth arising in places like China and India, where there is a sizable potential from a huge agricultural sector. The security of supply benefits of biomethane are compelling, but we cannot lose sight of the long-term climate goals of the EU. Biomethane can contribute to carbon neutrality and even potentially provide negative emissions if CCUS technologies are integrated into their production or consumption. But robust measurement verification is needed now more than ever as the industry prepares for meeting the ambitious targets ahead. Today, hydrogen is already a large industry. In 2023, hydrogen demand reached 97 megatons, representing a 2.5% increase over 2022 and continuing in the growth trend observed over recent decades. We expect this trend to continue in 2024 with demand reaching up to 100 million tons. Currently, low-emission hydrogen production, either through renewable or nuclear electricity-powered electrolysis or fossil fuel use with carbon capture, accounts for less than 1% of global production. In our STEPS scenario, hydrogen demand is expected to reach more than 110 million tons by 2030, still dominated by traditional applications. However, there is a strong momentum for the use of hydrogen, pushed by its potential to reduce emissions, enhance energy security, and the introduction by several major economies of new industrial policies, in which hydrogen technologies are prominently featured. By 2050, hydrogen demand reaches more than 150 million tons in STEPS, with these new applications accounting for 1/4 of global demand. This is a notable increase in hydrogen use, but still far from the role that hydrogen must play in the energy transitions toward a net zero emission systems. In the IEA's net zero emissions by 2050 scenario, hydrogen demand grows rapidly to reach nearly 150 million tons already by 2030, with new applications already accounting for around 40% of global demand. By 2050, hydrogen demand should quadruple today's demand, reaching more than 400 million tons, with most of the demand coming from new applications and a significant decrease in refining, which is today the second largest consumer of hydrogen. Demand is one side of the coin, and the other is production, where we should also see a significant change compared with today's situation. Based on the existing projects under development and implemented policies, low-emission hydrogen production in our STEPS scenario grows tenfold to reach 7 million tons by 2030, with a faster uptake afterwards to reach nearly 50 million tons by 2050, or around 1/3 of global production. In the net zero emissions, the uptake is much more aggressive, with more than 60 million tons of low emissions hydrogen produced by 2030 and 400 million tons, equivalent to 95% of global production, by 2050. E-methane can play a key role in enabling trade in low-emission gases. This slide shows a simplified scheme of e-methane production. E-methane is produced through a two-step process. First, low-emission electricity is converted via electrolysis into hydrogen, which is then reacted with a carbon source to obtain e-methane. Similarly to natural gas, e-methane can be stored in underground storage sites, or it can be also liquefied and make use of the existing LNG infrastructure. As such, it could enable the development of long-distance trade and support the decarbonization of maritime transport. This map shows a non-exhaustive list of e-methane projects. In Northern Europe, the e-methane landscape is very much dominated by Finland. And Japanese utilities have been also very actively exploring the feasibility of e-methane projects with LNG export countries, including Australia, US, and Peru. And while the number of final investment decisions remains limited, the global e-methane production could reach over 1 BCM per year by 2030, based on the projects which are currently being proposed. LNG exporters account for around 80% of the potential e-methane production by 2030, highlighting the perfect match between e-methane and the existing LNG infrastructure. So here are key takeaways, and I look forward to productive discussions today. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you to Kezuki for that. I'd like to hand over next to Mechthild Worsdorfer, the Deputy Director General at DG Energy at the European Commission in Brussels, I presume, who will outline the priorities of the new Commission. Mechthild, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Good morning from everyone, indeed from sunny Brussels today. Thank you very much for inviting me here to speak about the EU policy on low emission gases. I have some slides as well. I think they will be shown. Okay, very good. So as you mentioned, we have a new commission, a new mandate of the commission, which started on the 1st of December. So we had the first 3 months now where a number of initiatives were shown. And I just highlight that we had this week a proposal from the Commission, which is called Clean Industrial Deal and Action Plan on Affordable Energy. So this Commission will very much focus on competitiveness, industrialization, but it's also a continuation of the previous mandate, which focused on the Green Deal, decarbonization. So we see it as hand in hand going decarbonization and industrialization. That's why I will highlight a few things around the rationale of low-carbon gases and hydrogen, what we have achieved, and what's in and what's coming up very soon. So I will start with my first slide, which you can see on the screen. So when we speak about climate neutrality by 2050, this is a commitment from all the 27 heads of state and government of the EU member states. It's a climate law. So we want to become climate neutral together by 2050. And that includes all sectors, but it also includes all kinds of clean technologies. As we know, energy supply and use is responsible for 3/4 of emissions in Europe. And the idea is, of course, to reduce it to zero, and then we have the negative emission and the use of CCU and CCUS and others. But the basic idea here, as you can see, is a pathway with ambitious targets for 2030, which we already set and we are implemented. And soon we will have a target for 2040, all on the same pathway to achieve net zero by 2050. The next slide. What does it mean? Of course, it means a rather ambitious goal and a big transformation of our energy system. We want to become, first of all, more efficient and the circular energy system. So energy efficiency comes first, but also the circularity is a big topic. And if you read the Clean Industrial Deal, which was adopted this week, we really want to focus and help our energy-intensive industries to decarbonize. We have the idea of lead markets for the development, production, and diffusion of industry of clean technology. And we know we need more clean energy investments. And here, clean energy is defined in a broad sense. If you look at our second pillar here in this pyramid of the transformation of the energy system, we need to electrify wherever possible. So a deep electrification of transport and other sectors. And this is very much based on renewables, but also on nuclear electricity for the countries who have, and all other forms of clean renewables or clean electricity. And the third, and there we see also an important part, is really the use of renewable and low carbon fuels where electrification is not feasible. So we focus very much on the hard to abate sector, hard to decarbonize sector, both in industry and in transport. And that's, I will focus a little bit now my presentation on where we are. So we have a clear policy and legal framework. And we really want to create a market on the hydrogen and decarbonized gas markets. We have a legal package which was adopted and entered into force last year, where we have new rules to lower the carbon footprint of the gas market. We see the gas market right now with uncertainty around the world as an important market, but as also a quite volatile market. And in the long run, our aim is to decarbonize. So we want to shift from fossil natural gas to renewable and low carbon gases. And we want to boost the uptake, in particular in the EU, by 2030 and beyond. Today, it's very clear, fossil gas accounts for 95% of all gaseous fuels consumed in the EU. And we want to reach by 2050, 66% of all gaseous fuels in the energy mix by low carbon and renewable. So from 5 today to 66 in 2050. And we know already that renewable and low carbon gases are gaseous fuels with a lower carbon footprint than fossil fuels. And we consider on one side, as you can see, the renewable gases produced from organic sources, so biogas and its upgraded version, biomethane. That's quite an important part. And we see also the non-biological renewable sources from renewable electricity, such as renewable hydrogen and synthetic gaseous fuels. So that means that the low carbon gases are not produced from renewable energy sources, but in our definition, they generate at least 70% less greenhouse gas emissions than fossil fuel natural gas across their full life cycle. So we have a real definition and an objective where we want to go. And this package, the regulatory policy package, is about infrastructure needed and markets. It's the first comprehensive regulatory framework of the well-functioning of hydrogen markets and dedicated hydrogen infrastructure. And in a nutshell, the framework builds on principles we have for electricity and natural gas already. That means we are separating energy production from energy transport in order to safeguard competition, market access, and a level playing field. We have the rules of third-party access to allow them to take part of the market, and we have rules on permitting. So the package applies these rules also for the future hydrogen and decarbonized gas markets with much more liberty until 2030, where we see the scale up, and after 2030. And then if we go to the next slide. So if I differentiate, but it's all part of the same picture, and put in place what we have in mind on hydrogen in particular. So we had a EU hydrogen strategy already in 2020. I know that our EU member states, most of them have a hydrogen strategy. We also know in Europe that we will rely on domestic hydrogen production, but we also need to import hydrogen. And roughly, if we look at the EU market, it's probably half-half. So we need domestic production to scale up, but also we need to import more. And I will come back to that. When I speak about the hydrogen production, the first pillar, we have definitions of what is renewable fuels of non-biological origin, RF and BOEs, which we have defined as renewable hydrogen via a delegated act, so a legal framework where we really want to incentivize new renewables production and not take it out from other uses to produce hydrogen. So we have some rather strict criteria, and sometimes we are criticized for that, but we have a definition of what it is, renewable hydrogen. Very soon, hopefully by end of March, we will come out with our delegated act on low carbon hydrogen, so to complement and have a definition based on the gas package, which I just presented, on what is low carbon hydrogen. So we want to scale up of renewable and low carbon hydrogen in the future. We have also the need for infrastructure, because the production is one thing. We need the infrastructure. We have scaled up what we call project of common interest. We see a lot of more hydrogen infrastructure projects coming up. We have hydrogen corridors, either from the south, in our case, Spain, Portugal, to more the center, or from other North Africa, as I said, or from Ukraine, or from other parts where we need really corridors to bring the hydrogen where it's produced and where it's consumed. And there, I think we still need to look more on these hydrogen corridors. What are the missing elements to bring the hydrogen where it's used? And when I speak about hydrogen consumption, we want to stimulate offtake of hydrogen by energy intensives or other sectors where we need to decarbonize. And that's why we have, under our renewables directive, for example, rather ambitious binding targets for hydrogen in the transport and in the industry sector. We have also targets in the aviation and maritime sector, and that will be, when the member states are now implementing these targets, really take off the demand and the consumption of hydrogen. All that, as it's scaling up, we need funding support. We have set up since 2 years nearly what we call a European Hydrogen Bank, which is really a financing and coordination instrument to support the production of renewable hydrogen domestically in Europe, but also imports from international producers. And the latest, and it's only started with a pilot auction where we saw the cheapest source of renewable hydrogen were either in Iberian Peninsula or in Scandinavian countries, and they can produce up to 1.58 million tons of renewable hydrogen over 10 years in 6 projects. And we are launching right now the second round of auctions. It's a start really to scale up the hydrogen market. And by the way, in the Clean Industrial Deal, which came out this week, we want to replicate that in what we call a decarbonization hydrogen bank, where we also will start with a pilot next year on 1 billion euros, which we then want to scale up, really the same idea of decarbonization of the industry and help them in the takeoff of the market. So this, in a nutshell, is what we have in mind on the hydrogen side more concretely. And my last slide is then the next slide. As I said, we know that we need to import renewable gases and hydrogen in Europe, there is a lot of demand in our countries, which we cannot cover with our own domestic production. So we are relying on third countries. There are a number of them where we can then ship or pipe the renewable gases and hydrogen, different forms to Europe. I wanted to take up a recent example where we started working with Ukraine. We have full support of the situation of Ukraine. President von der Leyen on Monday was in Kiev with the whole college, and one of many deliverables were the signature and the roadmap of implementing a strategic partnership EU-Ukraine on biomethane, hydrogen, and other synthetic gases. It's about the regulatory cooperation, the needed infrastructure development, some investments in sustainable projects, and research and innovation. And it's really also about Ukraine, the end of the gas transit since end of this year, the end of the transit of Russian gas through Ukraine had obviously an impact also on the revenue for Ukraine. So this should be a new business, a new sources of revenues for Ukraine. They have a lot of potential and a lot of real renewable gases. So just 2-3 weeks ago, there was a first pilot export of biomethane from Ukraine to the EU that took place on the 7th of February. It already demonstrates the practical implementation of our new provision in Ukraine's customs regulation to allow for exports. And this happened, as I said, this month with 67,000 M3 via the pipeline to Slovakia, which is just to highlight a concrete example. And we are very glad it worked out, and we hope to have more. And I know during the day this afternoon, you will hear from Ukraine themselves how they put it up to make it happen. So with that, thank you very much for inviting us. It's really a very important topic. We see a lot of growth in the future internationally, but also in Europe. We need to partner up. So thank you very much, and looking forward for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Many thanks for those insights, Mathilde. We'll now move to our next speaker, Mitsunori Fukuda, who's the Director of Gas Market Office at the Agency for Natural Resources and Energy within the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, otherwise known as METI in Japan. And he will present on the future role of methane. Mitsunori, the floor is yours.
I'm Mitsunori Fukuda, Director of the Gas Market Office, METI Japan. Thank you for having this opportunity today. I'd like to explain the status of effort regarding e-methane by Japanese government and companies. Please show the slide. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, thank you. First, let me explain characteristics of energy consumption in Japan. The graph on the left side shows the trends in final energy consumption by sector. Looking at the latest figure for 2022, the industrial sector accounts for 45% of the total, the commercial sector 60%, and the household sector 15%. The graph on the right side shows the trends in primary energy supply in Japan. This shows that the use of exogenous coal and natural gas occupies top positions. Next slide, please. This slide shows the importance of decarbonizations in heat demand. Japanese government declared carbon neutrality by 2050 in October 2020. To achieve this goal, efforts are required across Japan. For example, industries such as the steel and chemical industries, which require high temperatures, the use of heat is essential. It is necessary to decarbonize such heat demand, but it is difficult to avoid CO2 emissions using conventional methods such as burning gas. Therefore, e-methane is an important technology as a means of decarbonization gases. Next slide. Next, please. This slide explains the future of e-methane. This may not be necessary, but let me explain what e-methane is. E-methane is a synthesized from hydrogen and captured CO2. As no additional CO2 is emitted, it contributes to low carbonization and carbon neutrality. Using such e-methane as a raw material for gas makes it possible to decarbonize heat demand. Also, its greatest feature is e-methane can utilize existing LNG and natural gas infrastructure. This makes it possible to achieve decarbonization while keeping equipment costs down. Next, please. Here, I'd like to introduce recent Japanese government trends regarding e-methane and biogas. In Japan, the strategic energy plan has been issued to indicate the basic direction of energy policy. On February 18th of this year, Japanese government published the 7th strategic energy plan. That plan includes the usefulness of hydrogen derivatives, including e-methane, and target for the introduction of e-methane and biogas. Examples of the contents included in the 7th strategic energy plan are provided at the bottom of this slide. For example, third point in the box below describes the need for technological development to commercialize e-methane and reduce its cost. In relation to this, the status of effort regarding technological development will be explained in this next slide. This next. One of the challenges to introducing e-methane is its high production costs, and the majority of manufacturing cost of e-methane are electricity costs associated with hydrogen production. In order to reduce the cost, we promote development of innovative methanation technologies to increase this energy conversion efficiency. This aim is to establish base technology by 2030 and realize mass production technologies in the 2040s. The part shown in blue in the figure below shows innovative methanation. In addition to this, we have worked on development conventional methanations, Sabatier reactions. This is expected to be commercialized at earlier date. Next, please. In addition to technological development effort, we are also working on establishing an environmental for carbon utilization in gas utilities. One of these is a support measure focusing on the price gap under the Hydrogen Society Promotion Act. We plan to provide support for 15 years to suppliers who aim to develop a commercial scale supply chain of low carbon hydrogen and its derivatives. In addition, we must confirm the traceability, such as the origin of the hydrogen and CO2 of e-methane production. The other is a system about gas utilities aimed at preparing the environment for introduction of e-methane and biogas in 2030. We plan to introduce a system in which gas utilities will include the cost necessary for injection e-methane and biogas into their feeds. Next, please. I'd like to change the topics and touch on some of this year's hot topics in Japan. Expo 2025 Osaka, Kansai, Japan is scheduled to be held from April to October in this year. Japanese gas industries is planning to give an explanation about e-methane at the gas pavilion. Next, please. Furthermore, at the expo site, Osaka Gas plan to demonstrate e-methane production, as the visitors will be able to see this. E-methane will be produced from biogas from food waste generated at this site and hydrogen. We are looking forward to your visit. Next, please. Finally, I'd like to introduce some of efforts being implemented worldwide to produce e-methane. Feasibility study and so forth are being implemented around the world. I hope that in this future, as this effort progress, carbon neutrality will progress. I feel there has been great progress compared to a few years ago. I hope that this effort will continue to progress with worldwide cooperation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mitsunori. We'll now go to our first panel session. I'm going to hand over now to Anna Alcade, my colleague here at the IEA and renewables analyst, to take us through the panel session on the role of biogases in clean energy transitions. Anna, over to you.